Okay, well, welcome everybody. Hello everyone, and thanks for joining the Space Store Trends Live 2020 series. These are weekly episodes, conversations on workspace and design and trends with a new topic each week and two covers of every topic in case you can't get to one of them. We wanted to take advantage of the very unusual times in which we are to share learnings, raise points for discussion, also to garner points for future insights. So we're going to welcome those. I'm Nick Baxter, Managing Director of Space Store in the UK region. And I guess that's my formal title, but my leaning is really strategic marketing and what's going on out there. So I'm pleased to introduce this episode, which is unpacking 5 of our 2020 workspace trends. So thanks for all who have joined. Very good number there, and many that we know well. Maybe a number who don't know Space Store well. So just a quick intro to Space Store and who we are. Our mantra is California cool plus London design. And we're often asked, what does that mean? So we started in London in 1992, and we've always been innovators in workspace furniture and systems. So that's the London design. Then in 2012, we established our presence in California. California Cool includes the long history of innovation and vision and early adopters that characterizes California. That goes right from the gold rush, right through to Silicon Valley and the tech world. And if we look at the names we've worked with out in Silicon Valley and then spreading right through our regions, the names, the top techs, they're the blue chips, they're some of the biggest employers, and we've been privileged to work with them and co-create solutions to workspace problems since 2012. So we've been learning about the challenges, learning about and innovating solutions, often co-creating some entirely new product category. And then up to date, 2020, this year, we set up in New York City. We engaged Gensler New York to design the space with us. It was very collaborative, great experience. And then we had the formal launch just last month in February. In our world, that's about the last thing that happened in New York, because we launched the design center and then the lockdown came. But we're not discouraged. We're taking advantage of this time to engage with you all. And what we focused on in the New York Center was the experiential workspace. So the experiential workspace is more than just a place to go. There's a great quote about design, and it's not just about creating a look, it's about creating an experience. I think there's a quotation we can put on the screen there. So I won't read it out, but the essential bit is in the middle there. It's about creating experiences. And that's what we're focused on. That's the kind of umbrella for today's topics about human connection, about tech embedded in the workplace. And this is all about engagement. And when we get to a more normal situation again, and today's conditions have normalized and we're back into work, I think the connections we make with each other will be more valuable than ever. So that's just an introduction. Thanks everybody. I want to touch on this volume that's on the screen now, experiential spaces. This is a very high quality tome that we've produced to showcase some of the best projects right across our regions, Europe, UK, USA, and there's some fantastic content. And we're offering a draw for everyone who's present today to win your copy. Now this is worth about £50, $70 American, and we're going to give away a copy. In the chat, the Zoom chat box, put suggestions for future topics for our Trends Live episodes. And we'll do a random prize draw and send a copy of this book to the winner. Thanks all. I'm going to introduce the other panel speakers today. We've got Nick Steadman, we've got Alex Harvey, we've got Andrew Baxter, Gordon MacDonald in New York, and I'll hand over now to Nick to take us into unpacking the workspace trends. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Nick. And good morning and good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. We're going to unpack the workspace trends. These are trends which we've seen as most influential on workspaces today and into the future too. We've probably all seen these trends around. Maybe we've even talked about them from time to time. Some of you would undoubtedly understand these in great detail. But today we want to shine a light on how these play out in some of the live projects we have recently been very privileged to work on, as Nick has been saying. Alex and Andrew are going to join me, and we're going to work together on this. I'm going to share some knowledge that we've gained for each of these, and then Alex and Andrew will demonstrate how this is played out in some real live examples. So moving on to our first trend, the hybrid workspace. So what we find is that the term the hybrid workspace means different things to different people. Some see it as another term for the agile office, where work is done in the most appropriate zone for that task. I'm sure everyone's familiar with that concept, but some see it maybe as the blending of work and home. And we've all seen how the look and feel of the workspace has changed over the last few years. It's become more softer, more homely, more luxurious sometimes. But we see this term applied to another trend in the way that spaces are being designed, and that's in the way that the inhabitants of a space are mixed, and the use of that space is mixed. Some refer it to as the democratization of space, where it's being opened up to more people, even to the general public. So the days where a space is designed for just one purpose have moved on. Spaces are now being designed so that multiple organizations can collaborate together and work together in the same space. And a very popular concept of this is seen in the co-working space. This is where people from many organizations and sectors are blended together in a shared working space. But we feel the concept actually goes wider than that. We see academia and the commercial world mixing. We see startups and execs from corporate giants rubbing shoulders. We see large parts of the building even being given up to the general public to use. Alex has got a very interesting analogy of how this is played out in not only the workspace, in other areas, and also about a story of one of our clients, Cornell, where we've worked on a scheme with them and collaboration between more than one company. So over to you, Alex.
Yeah, thanks, Nick. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Good, yeah. Well, I'm Alex Harvey, VP Sales with Space Store, and wanted to share my thoughts around, firstly, the hybrid workplace and picking up on some of the points that Nick's already mentioned, but also this particular project, so Cornell Tech in New York City. And just picking up on one of the points that Nick touched on earlier about hybrid workplace, I actually wonder whether perhaps we shouldn't even call this type of environment a workplace. It's a place where there's a fusion or a blurring of lines between maybe work, but between areas of life, different areas of life. It could be work and home, it could be education, it could be leisure. And really what these spaces provide is more than what any one of these individual types of spaces could give you. So more than what a co-working space on its own could provide, more than an office could provide, more than a home on its own could provide. And I like to think of this in the same way that our homes have evolved over the last 100 years, and the way that if you just picture the rooms within your house and how they used to be very defined in their purpose, how they were used, the type of activities that were happening there. So if you think, for example, of the kitchen, in the 1950s, the kitchen was, a small, isolated, very functional room only for cooking in. But now if you look at the kitchens in modern homes, they're open plan, they're expansive, they're multi-purpose, and the boundaries between cooking and living, in inverted commas, have almost disappeared, or maybe completely disappeared in many cases. And I wanted to share this example, which is the Cornell Tech University on Roosevelt Island in New York's East River. So if I just tell you a bit about the background to the project, and this kicked off probably nearly 20 years ago now, when the former New York Mayor Michael Bloomberg was behind a push to accelerate the growth of the New York City's tech sector and make the economy less dependent on the traditional Wall Street and financial services industry. And part of that was this new campus on Roosevelt Island. And this particular area was a tech-focused graduate school. And this is really a first of its kind building. This particular building is called the Tata Innovation Center, and it houses a whole host of different types of activities and people and groups. So you've got the Cornell Tech students hustling to commercialize a new idea. You've got startup businesses on the urge of explosive growth. You've got established companies developing leading edge technologies and products. And then of course you've got the academic teams conducting their groundbreaking research. And that startup culture is really the lifeblood of Cornell Tech, where you see academia and industry colliding and meeting and rubbing shoulders and creating this explosion of new ideas. And as you can see on the slide there, the expectation is that this space will generate hundreds of new companies, up to 8,000 new jobs and 23 billion of economic activity over the next 35 years. So it's an incredible space and an incredible example of how the workspace, and to maybe a higher level, spaces that are created can be used to do more than just work. Nick, can I hand back over to you to take us through the next slide?
Oh, very good. Thanks. That's interesting, Alex. The next trend we want to look at is tech fusion. And it's a very interesting trend. This is something which the tech industry is leading in again, with Silicon Valley giants. They're building model workspaces to include all and everybody, but it's the way they're doing it with integration of technology. They're not only embracing the new disruptive technologies out there, but they're integrating them very, very tightly and seamlessly into these buildings. And we also see this concept, particularly in hardware and software design. Tech hardware, software developers, they do this very well. They spend millions and millions, many hours making their products simpler, less fussy, more intuitive. And we feel that designers and manufacturers of furniture and spaces need to be doing the same. Technology is becoming more built in. We see Wi-Fi just no longer being a thing anymore. It just works everywhere. Wherever you sit, there's power, there's charging points. We feel that charging should just be built in and simple. Lockers, for example, should just work with the technology that we use already, our phones or a building card perhaps that we perhaps already own. Coffee machines are becoming more integrated, more intelligent. They already know your favorite blend, whatever time of day, and they dispense it as you walk up to the machine. Technology should be invisible and intuitive and not bolted on. Alex, tell us about the leading financial services company we've been working with in the USA and how we've blended technology into the furniture there.
Yeah, thanks, Nick. This is Alex again. And I just wanted to agree with what you're saying about integrating technology seamlessly. And I think there's kind of two angles to that. There's the physical integration, so the visibility of whatever type of technology it is we're talking about into the environment, but also the integration into how people work. Because I always think that the point of technology is to enable human beings, it's to enable us to be smarter, to work faster, to make better decisions, to create better solutions. And whilst the technology can replace some of the tasks we do, and probably do them infinitely better and faster than a human could do that task, they can't replace people. They can't replace the creativity, the decision making, the problem solving that people bring. And there was a great example with this client here, who are a leading financial investments company in the United States, who were really taking they shared with us that they were taking a 3-year journey, and they were transitioning, perhaps I should say they were transforming from a traditional finance company to a tech company. They had seen the impact of digital technology on their industry and the potential to disrupt traditional finance markets by embracing things like blockchain and AI and some of these other tech trends that they were able to bring into their business to make them a better business, to give their clients a better experience. And what that meant is they had to pivot the entire business, not just the business and the structure and the products, but the type of employee they were looking to bring into the company. And that meant that they were looking at these kind of knowledge workers, code writers, the kinds of people who, 5-10 years ago, you would have said would have gone to work for Google. And to me, that's really the point of a lot of these workplace trends, and perhaps the bigger societal trends that we're seeing today. It's about the people, the workers, the organization, and the way that they bring those people on board and engage with them and enable them to be productive and effective. So with this particular client, there was a huge amount of research done long before the kind of designs were created around how people use their workspace and the furniture pieces that were needed to support and foster the best practices that they wanted to bring into their space. And with this particular business, they had over 50,000 workers in the US, 6,400 in this particular campus. And they really needed to make the user experience seamless so that you could arrive, you could find a locker, you could use a locker, and you could safely store your personal belongings. But not just the user experience, but also the facilities team and their management of the space had to be quicker and more seamless. And by using a smart locker system where the building access swipe card or an app on your smartphone enables you to select a locker, not necessarily the same locker every day, and not necessarily the same person owning a locker, but selecting a locker across the whole of that campus or even across the whole of the real estate footprint of that organization, meant that they could be more collaborative and agile within their space, but also reduce the number of lockers that they needed. And this is going to be one of the webinars in this series, actually, is a webinar titled Dispelling the Myths Around Smart Lockers, and how we can engage with clients to enable the workplace practices that they want to promote within their workspaces. So check the website out for when that's going to be in the series. And I'm going to hand over to Nick now, going to give us a little bit more of an insight into the next workplace trend.
Good. Let's move forward to the third trend, which is the human connection. And this trend is particularly relevant right now. We feel society is already suffering from a loneliness epidemic, and it's going to get worse as we bed down into self-isolation. We're naturally social creatures, and depending on where you are on the extrovert spectrum, you need differing amounts of face-to-face interaction with other human beings. And technology has enabled us to work from anywhere, and we're using technology now. But is this actually causing us to spend more time on our own? Very interesting 2018 Nielsen report identified that adults are spending, on average, over 11 hours per day consuming online content. That's 11 hours not talking to people. And then if you add in 6 to 9 hours of sleep, then we actually see a lot of time that we're spending alone. Technology is supposed to improve the way we communicate with one another, and it's supposed to connect us. But in some ways, we feel it's actually driven us further apart. A recent Forbes article quotes that technology only exists because humans created it. This makes us, the humans, the most important piece in the digital puzzle. Without us fostering the technology we've created, we actually risk losing touch with the entire reason we created it to begin with, which was to improve how we communicate and connect with each other. Very interesting summary there. I mean, to be clear, technology has been instrumental in connecting and shifting our world to what it is today. Because of technology, we can get things done more quickly. We can get in touch with friends and co-workers across the globe with just a touch of a button. And we can even just stay connected now in this unprecedented crisis. But how connected are we really? Are we actually becoming more lonely? Loneliness and social isolation, takes a steep toll on the human body. This in turn can undermine the well-being of both body and mind. Studies show that people who are chronically lonely have significantly higher chance of having heart disease, or more vulnerable to certain cancers, for example. They might have an increased risk of stroke and are more likely to develop neurodegenerative diseases such as Alzheimer's. Meaningful human-to-human connection is really a valuable luxury today, and the office plays an important part and is an important site for maintaining and making those connections. We feel that offices should be designed for fostering great relationships between people, both in formal work areas and informal social areas too. There should be communal spaces where we remember our shared humanity. You can't always meet face to face, but where you can, we feel it's much better to do so. We can get a much better feel for the person's tone and sentiment and feeling that we can from behind the screen. For many people, it's almost become uncomfortable to sit down across the table and meet face to face, make eye contact, because that's not really the world we live in any longer. Let's face it, when we go back to work, it's going to be different. Many roles will have adapted. Some may have even disappeared. But some will have adapted so they can work away from the office. But the best ideas and the best conversations happen when people meet face to face. And the design of the workspace will play an ever increasingly important part in making this happen. Just to summarize this, Timothy Leary, Harvard professor and author, said, "In the future, physical meetings will be sacred." And he said this many years ago, but it's a very spookily accurate statement in the face of the current climate. Andrew, tell us about this and how it applies in two projects that we've done at Headspace and Adobe.
Thank you, Nick. Hello everyone, I'm Andrew Baxter, Sales Manager UK. So we can see on the slide the project at Headspace. So they're a meditation app provider, Californian based. They want to provide their employees with collaboration spaces to promote creativity in their Los Angeles office. It's a great project. I wanted to do a slightly deeper dive on Adobe, which is on the next slide. So this is Adobe London, and just how human connection applies on this one. Well, a lot of you know Adobe, great company, a lot of great products, Photoshop, Illustrator, InDesign, a lot that we know. This is their building based on Silicon Roundabout, which is a hive of innovation. After San Francisco and New York, it's the largest technology cluster in the world. And as you can see from the quote on the slide, they wanted to create this certain atmosphere around humans connecting. So we worked with Gensler London, and Adobe really needed to achieve this because they could see that real breakthroughs and successes are when humans connect. So they call a coming together of employees you don't often meet a creative collision. Now, as you'll understand, that can only happen physically in the workplace. You don't just bump into someone using Zoom or Skype or technology. So this is the human connection. So understandably, Adobe realized they had to do something special if they were to ensure these essential human-to-human connections were going to happen every day, at scale, and without fail. So on the next slide, you can see the space door railway carriage again. It's used alongside other lounge seating, but really creating interactive social settings where these creative collisions could happen. So Adobe realized this was going to have to be in the heart of their space, away from the hubbub of the open plan, away from the windows, in the center where the T points were, because they really wanted to encourage these accidental meetings here. Also, these spaces act as a refuge for an intimate meeting or a conversation or a phone call, or just to meet with colleagues from departments you don't usually mix with. So look out for our deeper dive on the pods and booth products in this webinar series. I'll hand back to Nick now.
Okay, good. Thank you, Andrew. So fourth trend that we're unpacking today is building communities. This trend really follows on from the last one. Human connection helps with building communities, and we feel that great communities have to be curated. They rarely just happen on their own. One of the big lessons we've learned from studying co-working spaces is it's not so much to do with the layout or the aesthetic, but it's more to do with the successful community that these spaces build. There's a very interesting Harvard Business Review which questions the users of co-working spaces, and they look at why people thrive in these spaces. And some of the information they get back is fascinating, that they feel that work is more meaningful in these spaces. There's a very strong work identity, and you're working with a number of like-minded people. Also, it's the norm to help people out. People are assisting each other, They're not just going to work, they're part of a social movement. They also feel they have more job control. These spaces are open 24/7, they can go and come as they please. They're feeling part of a community. It's less about conformance, more about participation. And so you can see underlying all of these reasons why people thrive in these spaces is this sense of community and a community building. Grind is a co-working space in New York City. Anthony Marinos, he oversees Grind's marketing and community management. And he says that when it comes to cultivating our community at Grind, we're all about the human element. We consider ourselves as much as a hospitality company as we do as a workspace provider. He says that our staff know all our members by name and profession, and we're constantly facilitating introductions between new grindists. So, as we said, it's not just the design and aesthetics of these spaces that makes them successful, but the communities that they build. This is underlined again by the Global Workspace Association, who say time and time again that people come to these spaces for the space, but they stay for the people. Also reinforced by the Global Co-working Unconference, or JUICY, they say that, or they have recently focused their conferences on the whole power of this community. What we also see as fascinating here is as these types of spaces have massively grown over the last few years, there is a lot of choice there. And once these companies have offered the usual expected perks like free food and drink and gym and table tennis table and so on, they're all very similar. And the way that these companies are differentiating themselves is by the communities that they generate. We see nichification of space in these co-working areas. We see some focusing just on tech and tech workers, for example. Some are just female-only space. Some of these are just for fashion designers, for example. So they're using their community as a point of differentiation to sell their particular space or brand. Andrew, tell us about how we've done this at Gusto.
Thanks, Nick. Yeah, well, personally, this has got to be my most favourite Space Store project. So this is incredible. Gusto, so they're a cloud-based HR software company. This is our San Francisco headquarters. And if you talk about building community, being about authenticity, well, if this project's anything, it's an authentic space. So you've got a warehouse or an old shipyard, stood unoccupied for decades, and now it's Gusto's new home. So Gusto worked with Gensler, asked them to curate the space for them, and then Gensler in turn worked with Space Store for the Palisades zone dividers as a stylish divider of space around the lounge settings. So they've got this lovely open plan atrium space at the heart of their building, and alongside the incredible interior that was left from the many industrial elements you can see, so the lifts and the cranes and the beams. We've got the more modern furniture settings to create this lovely ambience in the space. So it might seem a bit strange to ask, but many of you are probably working from home. I don't know how many of you are wearing shoes, just got your socks on or whatever, but that's the policy here in Gusto. So the owners, they wanted to bring this authenticity in. So they'd both grown up in no-shoe houses. They decided they want to extend this tradition into the space and keep it as the company grew. So with every office change, every expansion, they didn't dilute that spirit of authenticity that was the beginning for that company. So you can see on the slide, they called it a great equalizer. So you're bringing people in and making them feel comfortable. It doesn't just stop there. So with this community at Gusto, the Gusties, as they call them, they've got free food and drink. So just like as if you're working at home, you can easily access your favorite snacks, your drinks, you can carry on, you don't pay for it, but you're working together. You're building this sense of community. It's not only fueling you, but importantly, when you work and cohabit with people, that's bringing together a sense of community. Then onto this idea of neighbourhoods. It's a word that's used a lot. So authentic spaces and created by their inhabitants. So one tech company we've worked with a lot, they have what they call in their teams a team totem. So the team kind of is gathered and revolved around this theme they've set up within their team. Sometimes it's a physical object. And then this organic growth that comes out of these communities as they're built. So if you feel at home in your work setting, and you're working with people you trust and respect, and you've got relationships with, and admittedly, sometimes you with them more than your own family, that's when things work. That's when things flow. That's when productivity is there. But as with any space, the space without the people is just a space, but the community is built by the people and it's helped by those surroundings. So I guess a challenge could be everyone that's in design out there, how can we build this sense of community into our designs? Is there something in your next project, something authentic or original that you could use as a sort of lever to build a community sense? I'll hand back to Nick now.
Thank you. And for our last and fifth trend, which we're unpacking today, perpetual beta. Perpetual beta or beta, depending where you come from in the world, is a phrase attributed to Tim O'Reilly, who's a well-known tech writer. And it's a concept applied to the creation and release of software. It's the development and release of a service or software in which constant updates are the foundation for the habitability and usability of a service. So the way this works is that users are treated as co-developers, these are Tim's own words, in a reflection of open source development practices. So perpetual beta has its roots in an even earlier expression or concept, which is release early, release often. It's a software development philosophy that emphasizes the importance of early and frequent releases to create a tight feedback loop between developers and testers or users. So advocates of this system argue this system allows for software development to both develop faster and more accurately, but also it eliminates the risk of creating software that nobody will use. So how does this software concept apply to the design world? Well, in one sense, we're all in perpetual beta. The most dangerous state you can be in is to think that you know it all and to stop learning. So we're never finished, we're never complete, we're never perfect, and we should be continually opening ourselves to learning, to input and to feedback. The most vulnerable companies out there are the ones that think they've cracked it with a perfect product for their marketplace. But perpetual beta allows for perpetual innovation, continuous improvement, and this very tight feedback loop. So how does it actually apply to furniture and office design? Well, the traditional approach to office design is about receiving a brief, gathering data, developing a strategy, designing it, building it, and this leads to some amazing award-winning spaces. But in some cases, it's not the most efficient or effective way to work in a space. The world is changing so fast, and spaces and the people and what we develop, the products that we sell are changing so fast, and our office spaces need to be keeping up with it. Perpetual beta is a way to allow this change to happen quicker. So we say that the whole concept of experimentation and improvement fits this. So a workspace is never finished. We'll never get the finished perfect workspace. SpaceStore have a concept called architecture within architecture. This concept allows the building of zoning and the construction of different neighborhoods within a workspace without using walls. It allows furniture to be moved around to form these different neighborhoods. And this furniture can be configured not just by the company, but by the actual users themselves. So they're continually reshaping the workspace to fit them. We partner with, well, world-renowned architecture firm Gensler, who often quote that we design how we think a client is going to use a space, but we love going back and seeing it different, seeing how different it's going to be as the client has configured it themselves. So, Andrew, can you take us to a well-known retail company, global retail company in Paris, and tell what we've been doing there?
Yeah, for sure, Nick. Thank you. So this client is really the embodiment of this perpetual beta working style, this new style. So as well as providing employees with a world-class office space in which they can operate, collaborate, socialise, be productive like never before, this online retailer wanted the furniture day one to achieve this, but also they had a requirement for in 18 months to move to their main permanent office. So the furniture had to go with them, but it had to achieve the requirements of the workspace both day one and day two. So in this instance, we've got the Space Store Palisades grid product on the screen there. And you can see how that was effectively used in a breakout scenario in the initial project. So that's one of the benefits of products that's modular over against joinery or something similar. Just a quick shout out to Lexi. One of the questions on the Q&A was around how we can keep our personal plants somewhere and have something, a more personal space when we're operating in a hot desking scenario. Well, Palisades is a great opportunity to bring in biophilia. Zoning product is a great way to bring in some sort of personalization into the space. Also on this project, moving on, we had the Space Store railway carriage product. Again, a alternative to joinery, but this client had this specific need, and in many of their offices, they say they wouldn't go 6 months without some change or churn happening in their space. They're growing, they're that active in their space. And on this particular one, they wanted products in there that they didn't need to go to the city council for permits and permission to move and change the space and adjust it. So these products work brilliantly for them in trying to answer these needs, both short and long term. So what's Nick's mentioned, we've got our architecture within architecture white paper PDF that will come as a download following this webinar. But how to provide space without building walls, how to do it using furniture, which in turn has a benefit because the staff themselves, in a lot of these tech companies, they're engineers, they're practical people, and they like to get hands-on and move the space, as Nick said, to how best suits them, how they can give optimum performance. Again, with the pods and booth products, we'll be visiting that in more detail, but it just really shows how these workspaces in perpetual beta, always changing, always moving on, really need the right furniture to answer to that. Thanks, Nick.
Good. Well, that brings us to the end of our 5 key trends that will change the workspace as we see it now. We hope it's been useful to you and really appreciate you joining us. This is a part of a series of webinars being launched over the next few weeks, and the next one is next week. We hope you will be joining us, and a big thank you. Before we go, we've got time for a couple of questions, and I think Alex will be picking these up from those that have been posted on the chat. So over to Alex now.
Yeah, thanks, Nick. So I wanted to pick up on some of the questions that have been put onto the chat. Some great ideas there, and appreciate everyone who's contributed and participated in the webinar today. It's been great to just have that human-to-human connection, even if it is through technology. There's quite a few comments there around future trend series, which we're going to be coming back to you on. But there's a number of questions there which I wanted to kind of join together. Quite a few around the concept of how we're going to see shared spaces, shared desks following the current coronavirus situation that everyone finds themselves in. I noticed that Larissa's put that in part of her question. There's a number of others who've put that. William, you also put the same question. And I guess time will tell on this, but I think part of the answer to that is going to be how those spaces are designed and curated, I should say, in the first place. How we see the spaces designed to allow people choice of where to work and how they want to work, because I think there's an increasing recognition that people are individuals. What suits one person may not suit the next person, and the creation of a space that allows every individual to work in the best way for them so that they can do the best work that they can do. I think that's probably the most intelligent way of responding to some of these future challenges. But as I say, time will tell. I think the impact of coronavirus is going to be very long lasting and far reaching in society, in how we interact with one another. Even the types of events that we're holding here today, this is going to change, I think, the way that work's done in the future. Gordon, can I bring you in? Have you got any other questions or comments? Was there any other comments or suggestions in relation to how spaces will be designed following coronavirus?
Yeah, thank you, Alex. So I just wanted to, I think Carrie Hart asked a good one about collaborative spaces in the post-coronavirus world. And I think we definitely are seeing it in conversations that I've been having with global real estate executive teams. They're looking forward to what does a new social zone look like, what our social spaces look like. And it's something that I think here at Space Store, we already had product that lended itself to that, but I think that there's going to be even more development of that. And I think we're going to look at, somebody made a great question about the bench desking. That is a great question. Nowadays we are shrinking the workspace, we are shrinking where persons are working, but how do we give them the ability to break out? And I think a lot of companies are going to be looking at that. They're going to be looking at the wellness in the space. What can you say to that, Alex, about wellness? I saw a great question about that come in.
Yeah, I think it's becoming increasingly important in workspaces, the whole impact of the workspace on the people, the people who actually occupy that space. And as you said, I think Francesca put on a great question about mindful materials, low VOC, free of formaldehyde and other volatile organic compounds. I think people's awareness of the products that go into their space and the impact that has on people is continuing to increase the whole time. And we're seeing this with a lot of the clients that we work with. In particular, what's just in my mind right now is a project we're currently doing with one of the large tech companies where we're refining one of our existing products, but to meet a very, very stringent healthy materials list, which includes products that have no added formaldehyde. So there's a lot of conversations around formaldehyde and the impact of it, but I think maybe there isn't a general understanding that any natural material has formaldehyde in it. In fact, human beings have formaldehyde in us. But the point of products with no added formaldehyde is that that's not going to be emitting into the workplace. So we've been able to provide a solution with no added formaldehyde and removing some of the for example, PVC, some of the plastics that potentially will be harmful as well. And that's something which is we're seeing as a big focus with clients right now, and I think that's going to be continuing to increase. I think we've probably reached the end of our time slot. I know we'd requested 45 minutes of your time, so we really do appreciate everyone who's taken the time to join us. Please do come back, join us next week. As Nick has already told us, there's going to be a new webinar every week, and we'll be rerunning this webinar next week. So if there's any of your colleagues who have missed it, they can get the invite for that as well. And we'll also be putting this recording onto the website as well. So thanks very much, folks. Really appreciate you taking your time today. Stay well, stay positive, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye.